has now been around for 3 seasons, and coaches everywhere are saving time and being more efficient when it comes to scout cards. Coach Robinson from Texas says, "The thing I most enjoy is the ease of access to all the scout cards and how I can draw on them if I need to make any changes. Every coach that uses it says that it is so great to use. If you and your staff are tired of the old ways of preparing and using scout cards, check out thecoachpad.com to start enjoying Scout Team and making the 2023 season better than ever."
I'm gonna make this intro really short. Welcome back to another episode of the Gap Downbacker podcast. Just because I enjoy talking to this man, that's why I wanted him on. Coach John Arnett, who is still at Pampa since the last time we talked, has taken over essentially play calling duties. Correct me if I'm wrong. Since our last talk, I believe that's
first time. First off, thank you for having me back, man. I enjoy it every time. And it's great to hopefully share some things with the coach community. But yeah, my when you first contacted me, I was working at a 6A school down in the Houston area, and then I moved up to the Panhandle, be closer to my father. And now I'm at 4A school in Texas, which is considered the biggest of the small schools. And last year I was able to take the full reins of offensive coordinator, which was really interesting. It was the first time from complete install to calling the plays on Friday night. The head coach, Cody Robinson, did a great job of allowing me to be me. You know what I'm saying? And so super learning experience too. Nothing can prepare you for new roles, especially as you have more duties than actually just right there and going through it. So that was first year. You kind of always just try to, you feel like at times you're pretending, because you don't want people to see through you that you're a fraud or anything like that. And so you work really hard to do it better. Because it's intimidating. Anybody, make sure anybody that's ever called plays on a Friday night can tell you, those people in the stands have no idea how much different it is. And how much goes into it, because when we didn't score points in games, man, I took that personal, because I'm not putting them in the best position to win. You know what I'm saying? That's my job. And it's man, it reignited an entirely new candle of passion in me back for the game, because I've been just an offensive line coach for so long, 17, 18 years straight O-line coach. I'm O-line through and through, one of those true OG guys that, and it may have held me back. Most people are like, you need to coach everything. I'm an O-line guy. That's what I do, is coach O-line. But your focus and how you do things as an offensive line coach are a lot different than an offensive coordinator. And so great baptism by fire of having to truly understand secondaries and passing schemes was tough for me this past year, because it's like a second language. You know what I'm saying? I can speak it. If I saw it on paper, I definitely know what it said. But then when you're trying to actually apply it and have a conversation with someone, you're like, I hope that's right or whatever. It's still my second language, unlike run, but it's great. And I know I'm just rambling here. I'm just trying to think of some of the things that, as a first time, as somebody that has experience coaching, pretty much 20 years coaching experience, but now having that new experience of a move up to one of the roles that on staffs, coordinators and head coach, it's hierarchical on football staffs. You know what I'm saying? Kind of everything's set up military. So being up there has a lot of different challenges. It really does in the position. So I know, tying it back around, I know I'm rambling, but I hope someone gets something out of anything I say, because you always wish someone would have told you some things.
Well, I know, and I had that conversation with a buddy of mine the other day. He is a longtime head coach. He's now just coaching middle school because his son's in middle school, and it's time for change. But we had that conversation. If you don't know what you don't know until you experience it, really. Because like we talked a little bit about how playoffs, him and his O-line coach, I've had both of them on, and they both talk about there's the playoffs taught them a lot because there's a lot of things they didn't see to the playoffs. And even if they saw it beforehand, they usually have better talent. So they kind of didn't know what their weaknesses were, what they needed to prepare for. And it's kind of the same time you coordinate. Like I remember my first year coordinating defense, or the first time I called an offense 2 years ago as a head coach. Like you don't know what you don't know. And there's a lot of things you might know if you saw a picture of it, but seeing it applied or seeing like kind of you point coverages, like I know what man coverage or two read looks like, but now seeing all that work in at the same time, and like there's a lot that goes into it. Like what did you, and you kind of said a little bit right there, but what were the kind of the main points, like, oh, I need to go this off season and learn, like, or work on being prepared for XYZ? What was your kind of after this year, like, hey, this is what I need to mentally or go talk to somebody about or prep for?
For sure. So, that's the more and more, and coaches that are in it, there's no such thing as off season or anything like that. There's such different phases, and immediately after the football season, and these are things again that I am always trying to find ways to improve, and there's probably better ways, and big time important on it is being meticulous about self scout at the end of the season. And so that's where I start, because if something didn't produce, I think it's a cheap out to say, well, that kid wasn't a good receiver. It'd be like, he was the best we got. We got to find a way to get it produced. You can't blame kids on stuff. So then, and a process like this is why I went to even before I was OC, I shifted to wide zone. I was looking at run game. It's like, if it's not producing, then you maybe probably need to change, or you don't understand it, right? So that's where I started. And one of the things that I went through is now I start getting on the YouTube, but and there's great deals like your stuff that you always put out, and all the clinic stuff is unbelievable. And being able to just watch like all 22 films and stuff, and then try to kind of find the things that are going to bring up the deficiencies that you saw in your self scout. Yeah. And then you're evaluating your personnel, because I think really winning, and I think when you look at head coaches especially, because they really have to do this, like I can't imagine when your first job as a head coach, like all the different things, because I hear about it and it's like, I know nothing prepares you for that. But the most important thing is just being meticulously organized and communicating things from the top down. So if you evaluate all the factors that lead to winning or lead to producing, like I think I sit there and have sat down and been like, so what has a kid? Well, confidence helps, right? So I'll just write down confidence. But yeah, sitting down and again, I know I get long-winded, but self-evaluating, look at what my deficiency are, look at every variable I can think of that either led to success or led to not being efficient on a play. And it's like, is it being drilled? Is it something we're doing? Blah, 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 blah. So once I've got some main ideas, then like this past spring, what we did is we would meet once every other week at 6 a.m., even early February, stuff like that, and talked about some of the things that we wanted to do different. And then once we had an idea, because you got to fit things around getting the ball in playmakers' hands, and that the most important thing is production on offense. So everything has to be geared towards production, and keeping that in a, you have to be very detailed oriented, but on a scale that you're step back and seeing a lot of big picture stuff, because you got to know where everything's going to fit in there. And I think that's why it's hard for me not ramble, because there's all these little pieces that are all tied together that are important, that you want to say, because it's all about meticulousness and consistency. It's like that Bill Belichick quote. Consistency beats dependability beats ability every time. And it's like, that's such the big thing, is being dependable, and doing your job to the best of your ability. Everything that you can do it. And it's not always X's and O's. Getting young athletes to produce is the most important thing about it. Even if you're not 100% good on technique and stuff, of specific stuff, if you can convince that kid that you're going to get him the best chance of success, and make him feel confident, and that he knows he can get it done. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's what it's about, building those relationships, because you've got to give a kid confidence, and you have to have the ability for that kid to feel like he disappointed you, to get true correction on stuff like that. Like, as a parent, it's one of those parenting deals. Anger is always met with anger. When someone does something wrong, the best thing to do is to let them know, well, this was disappointing. It doesn't reflect who you are. But this behavior was disappointing. And I think doing that in coaching is super, super important, man. The more that and that kid know y'all are on the same page and not against each other, the better, and so much more important than anything else. I've seen coaches and worked with coaches that, if you were to talk X's and O's, may not have been the best XO coach, but were great coaches because they got kids to perform. And that is all that matters, is that, you look back, and people talk about Tebow a lot, like, oh, he didn't have all these big numbers when he got to the NFL. The dude was producing those. And that was kind of a weird statistic. You know what I'm saying? That's all that matters.
I don't care if you want 8 for 22. Guess what? You won a football game. That's what matters. Like, I mean,
that's it. If I got one more point than that dude on the other side of the field, I feel a lot better than when it's the other way around, Like,
you're 100% right. And you are also 100% right that you have to find a way to get athletes the ball. And depend whether you have one that's really, really good, or 4 that are really, really good. You got to figure out how to spread the wealth and handle all that. But continuing on from, like, those were obviously, that's how you evaluate if you won. Going into your first year, did you keep the same offense from the year before? Was there small or major changes going in and you taking over the offense?
So, like, going into the first year, I'm not going to call it a late hire. It was more along the lines of, I essentially was able to step into the role, and it was already made. And we had a couple of coaches, like the guy that was the prior OC took a job at 6A San Angelo, which Caden Coots is a great coach. He does a good job there. So he left. We had another coach, Zach Spears, went back to Gladewater. Another great young coach, but things just happened where people moved off. So it was me, and then there was the tight end assistant O-line coach. Quarterback coach wasn't there. The wide receiver coach wasn't there. And so it was kind of funny, because just 2 O-line guys, me and Reed Bradley. I appreciate him too. I'm lucky I have a good staff. We just be out there trying to play big boys as much as we could, and the passing game stuff. And then by that summer, we were able to hire people on. So I felt I wanted to change things as minimally as possible. I wanted to tie whatever they do know into, and there were things this year I ended up changing that I wouldn't last year, because they understand the identity better, if that makes sense right there, And so it was wild, man. You're trying to get all that, and you're trying to set up a ready list and an install schedule. And then you start having to set up and like I said, Cody Robinson, my head coach, is great that he leaves me and Paul Veers, defense coordinator. He has us manage the position coaches because, and I'm a firm believer in that. Hopefully one day I'll be a head coach. I can work through people and reach a lot more, man. And I think that's being a leader, is being able to communicate a vision clearly and letting people know that it's not for you, it's for the good. Like, hey, I'm saying these, we do these things, we act like this because this is all that it takes for us to be as successful as possible. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's important, communication, because again, it goes to confidence. I'm so big on confidence, and I kind of lost my track there, but I think I did that answer.
Yes. Oh, you're good. No, like I said, I was just curious, like, and obviously when the hire happens affects that tremendously, like what you're able to change,
Sure.
what you're able to do, and also again when you're able to get other staff there as well, that kind of is also a huge factor as well. I mean, from say when you've worked for other OCs to how you chose to install stuff, how did you was your timeline drastically different than say other people you've worked with? Did you think it was more accelerated? Was it about the same? How did you approach, say, an install schedule or install process?
Last year and going through install is one of the things I'm trying to learn as much as I can about right now, because it is, what is the right practice? Some coaches kind of go by the theory of, I'm gonna throw it all at them real quick, see what sticks, and then come back around. And then you could end up doing blocks, and so I've spent a lot of effort trying to do, make it where installs better, because it's tough, man, and it's frustrating as an OC when you're installing stuff and they're not executing it on the field. So like when I think back to last year's, I was doing it, and I think this is an important part. I was doing it the only way I had seen other people do it. You know what I'm saying? And so that wasn't me. You know what I'm saying? And when you're in any position, even like the position coach, if you're pulling the trigger on the actions that directly lead to the outcome, you have got to make sure that you're confident in it. I mean, you know what I'm saying? You got to be confident in it, and you want to make sure that you've covered all your bases. And I don't know, that part I kind of got lost there. Sometimes it's a stream of consciousness talking that I do sometimes. It's not all, and the older I get, it gets there. And man, I feel like I'm very poignant and on to something. And I'll be like, where were you going with that? Anyways, as an OC, yeah, I changed it last year, first one. I tried to throw it all out there and fast, and I reevaluated how I'm doing it, and looking at doing blocks this year, especially based around the identity, and I think that's going to be a lot better, is starting with who we are,
Yeah.
and building around that, because that's how it's going to happen in the game. And, yeah. and so that's where I'm at now on that.
Now continue with that. Obviously, the installing is one portion, and I think we're always all looking at better ways to install. Kind of as you point out, like heck, I've seen, I don't know, like 3 or 4 different. I'll just use an example. Air raid channels post install schedules and install stuff on their YouTube channels lately.
Yep.
And just because, like, hey, like and one of them was like as an updated version, because things change and you're figuring out what works best for your kids, and the size of your school matters, as you know, like
right.
What you might be able to do there at Pampa, if you go back to Houston area at a severely big school,
Yeah.
like yours installs might be completely opposite of each other just because of how many kids. But the next part of it is the unfortunate fun part, is the double-edged sword of play calling. How did your play calling evolve as the year went on? Like, because obviously, I think play calling for most people is a repetition thing. It is,
right.
there's some people just naturally get it and know it and like can see everything. The Lane Kiffins of the world, who are the sons of coaches who've grown up with dad watching film at the house since he was 2.
Right.
There's others who've just never done it before or been around somebody that's been play calling, and it's trial by fire. Like what works, what doesn't work, what works against people we play. How did your play calling evolve as the year went on?
You know, it's interesting because when I look at our week 1 game plan, and I felt like the assistant coaches I talked about earlier really did a great job. We would do an opening script this previous season, and we would try to strip that out to see different looks and see different things. We thought they'd be good plays or whatever, and you know, sometimes you get off of it, but I tried to always stick to that because of like some of the things Bill Walsh says when I think it's The Score Will Take Care of Itself, that book. You know, Walsh, freaking, what was I talking? Oh, yeah. I thought better on Thursdays in meetings than Sundays in games.
Yeah.
And it goes back to you gotta do a game plan that you've worked all week. And so one of the things that, at least going into next year, and one of the things that I started to grow on last year, is like making sure indie drill work is purposeful for what's going on. Like, you know, no, I skipped off because you got to know what plays are going to produce. And so I paid more attention in practice film at trying to really see what plays out of what looks were getting consistent yardage. And so I think that was one of the things that kind of helped me out, was that, because you learn nothing can substitute how much, like, you got to watch so much film. You really got to feel for it. You know what I'm saying? And it's the age of huddle and everything like that. What I found myself in this battle of being data driven because I'm a science guy, and then like trying to not put it all in that, you know what I'm saying? And like, it was interesting. Like, you gotta look at it from a very backed off perspective. So like usually during games, I would be, and I'll still do this, but this is just I had to go be way behind the defense. One, because I'm trying to get the widest field of vision, you know, and two, I talk too damn much, so I don't need to be around people anyways. I'm serious time. You know what I'm saying? So like, I like to be by myself, and it's like, you know, one of the things I got better at was making sure seeing what I saw on film on the field. Man, that'll make you a lot more confident. Like when you know, like, because if you've called a play early on, sometimes it's like spin the wheel. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh man, I hope this didn't work. So one of the things I learned as the season went on also was, again, and confidence is the theme in my mind, so it shows up in everything right now. When I was confident, it was just like when I played, those would be the best games. So, the game that I felt like I called perhaps one of the best was when we played the Hereford deal. It seemed to all be clicking right. And it's one of those deals that it's finding the balance of, you know, feeling the atmosphere, feeling who's up, who's down, but not getting wrapped up in the emotion itself. Like, because I mean, you got to know who's hot when they're hot. You got to know who's not when they're not. You know what I'm saying? And it's like you got to to me, when calling a play, the times I felt most confident is when I looked at all the situations that I thought would have happened, and I expected it, and I had a plan for it. You know, that's one of the things this next year I want to be better at, is is making sure that not only the opponent scout that we put in is very purposeful, but that we don't get drowned in it. You know what I'm saying? And so we can focus on getting the ball in our playmakers' hands in situations that give them the best chance. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. No, it's perfect, coach. Like I said, it's a, and you know, like it's as you do it, it becomes a lesson oriented thing, and you got to find what fits for you. Kind of like
Right.
out, like I mean, I was the same way my first year when I called offense. I stood far away from people. Like I don't want to hear a bunch of people talk. I want to
Yeah.
focus. Um, I don't want to hear, but like I don't need a lot from the press box. Like you give me the base level.
Right.
So speaking of that, I mean, how did you organize game day communication amongst your staff? Like I think that's an integral. And how are you going to kind of do it going forward?
You know, I want to each year I can get more purposeful, like because that would be one of the things you learn is kind of what information is meaningful during the stuff. You know what I'm saying? Because and so you get real specific is what I believe in. And what I've done last year and in the past is I'll ask specific things that I want them to look at on, like, remember I was telling you about an opening script, you know, and I give these reminder sheets to everybody, the ones that are upstairs and us coaches wise, you know what I'm saying? Because it's like, if you can direct the people's and your staff's eyes and they can be disciplined enough to keep their eyes on what they're supposed to and not watch the game, then great things can start happening. You know what I'm saying? And so that's one of the big things I believe in when it comes to press box communication is number one, there doesn't need to be a lot of chatter. Things need to be direct. They need to be points. And if you say it, mean it. Don't guess. It'd be better just keep your mouth shut if you're going to guess on stuff. Um, don't talk about what's going on in the defense. I can't stand in between series offensively when I've been on status and I hear someone be like, "Oh, the defense did this," and be like, I don't care." Like that is not going to help us get back out there. So in between series, I find it really important to talk about, all right, what have we completed? What do we like right here? What are we noticing? Because keeping people on task, it's the same thing that you have to uh, manage, you know, the position coaches in the same way that you manage the players. You set expectations and you know you hope you're doing best and stuff. And every time you do it, you learn some things that you told them to do that wasn't a good idea, you know, and then others it was a good one. But at least, and you said it earlier, doing things your way is the key. I know at the end of the day, I can sleep at night if I lost and I gave it a solid try and did it my way. Because if it's not my way, and I think people get caught up into this because they're scared to find their way. All they're doing, so you know, hey, you get a playbook that you inherited from the first staff you're on. You know how that stuff goes, right? Well, now all of a sudden they're running that, but they at that point they didn't know all. You know what I'm saying? Like you have to run what fits you and you got to do things the way that fit you and make it your own, because if not, you're not going to be as confident. I mean, you know, you don't trust it. Like I feel like my goal as an OC is to understand what I'm trying to do offensively so well that I can create high percentage situations of conversions and things like that. And so, you know, it's tough. You got to manage everybody the same, and you got to be purposeful with what you're hearing and stuff, and be stoic. Like the word stoic is important to me because it's one of the old Greek philosopher disciplines or whatever. There should be no emotion at all. Emotion has nothing to do with calling that next play. You know what I'm saying? And so, like, you score a touchdown, it doesn't matter. It's time to get to PAT, extra point field goal. You kick it, you know, now let's get ready for the next drive. and keep your nose on the grindstone and grind it out, because you look at the coaches that are the most successful, that's what they're able to do. Nick Saban, Belichick, those guys that are considered the top, the grind that those guys gladly embrace, it makes them special. They are going to get down and dirty, and they're going to sit there and do and turn every stone over. And I couldn't do it. I sit there and I like, man, I want to be better and stuff like that. And I'm always trying to grow, but it's like, it's really impressive. And you understand why top tier people end up right there, because again, it goes back to confidence and then dependability. They're consistent. That's trying to be a consistent coach in an office is I think the goal of every coach in an offense. You don't want to be the guy that lets down a team. I don't. I mean, I've said before, I think on here, the only reason I coach is because I love being a part of a team and stuff like that. That's I thrive on it. So I coach. I don't want to let people down, man. I want to do my part. It makes me feel good that I did it, and I contributed, and I had that hand in it, because getting to compete is such a blessing in this profession. Like on Gruden's book, I can't remember what it was called. He talks about the guy in the box factory. The guy in the box factory doesn't get ready for game day, and we do. And man, it's just a super blessing that all coaches have. That man, we get to compete still, and when you don't work hard and you don't commit to that, and you're not doing right every day, then you're not being a good teammate. So coaches have to listen. Not that I work with anybody that does this. I'm just saying, man, everybody's got to be on that same page about stuff, and we're all lucky that we get to do this, because it could be where we couldn't.
Nope, you're 100% right. Now, I want to hit on something you said there, because I mean, I think one of the big topics we've talked about is being you and do it your way. What is the John Arnett offensive philosophy? What is the do it your way philosophy? I don't necessarily need the schemes. Like I'm not like, if you want to hit on scheme, it's perfect, go right ahead. But if I ask you, what is the John Arnett offense going into this coming year, or after you've done it for a year, your philosophy going forward, what is it?
My mission statement. Yeah, man, I got that. Don't worry about that. I think that was one of the first things I had to do was like, well, what am I going to be? Well, offensively, there are certain things that I can dictate. Okay. I control alignments because of where I line up on the field. I can control coverages because of how many are on one side of the ball. I can control all that. So I need to manipulate it. So I'm going to manipulate the things that I can. Well, we just talked about the first one. The first one is the field, right? I can create grass on the outside by reducing sets. I can create grass in the middle by expanding. Like, I need to use every inch of that field, because in the end, you got about 11 defenders over there. There's 11 defenders over there. But I kind of have one that's a little different. It's like the R4 hit charts or something,
Yeah.
I look at that. I believe they got to cover 17 areas. So if I can create space either horizontally or vertically by the alignment, then I need to be taking advantage of that, because it boils down. The next thing is I can take advantage of the cadence. I say when the ball is snapped. Okay, I can go on quick, I can go on silent. I've got to be able to manipulate that, because again, I'm in control of it. The tempo. So there'd be cadence on when it starts, but then the tempo. Do I want to get into a hurry up air raid deal? Do I want to slow down? What do I have to do? I need to be able to manipulate that. So you should have tempos, and then you manipulate. The last thing really offensively is that I know where the ball is inserting, And then like I talk about the hit chart deal, that goes hand in hand with that. Like when I'm calling something, it's because I need to take advantage of something I saw an opponent scout. So most of the time that's a matchup. I need to attack the players that can't get it done. I need to try to attack them in the ways that they can't get it done. And there may be Nick Saban across the field, but in high school, there's a 16-year-old kid on that field. And then it don't guarantee nothing. You don't know what they retain and stuff like that. So it's all about creating confusion in that kid. You know, hey, when coach they shifted to 5 wide, coach said this, then I had to do this. So again, now I'm dictating things. And tying all that together, you can see I believe in just like I even talked about earlier, I'm going to see what all the variables are that I can control. And then if I can control it, it has to become an advantage. So I'm going to do that and then get the best matchups possible. Put the ball in my dude that shows he's going to get the most point per play against their worst players. Because the more I can do that, I know I can be successful. And if you get kids confident, then you can do a lot of great things. So most important thing is always starting out and identifying and knowing those things that you can manipulate and use them. Make people think, make a kid think. You know, schemes, freaking run schemes and all that. I think I've said this before on here. Those calculus, you know, like when you're talking about passing route combinations, when you're talking about run blocking schemes, that kid, that athlete has to understand a lot of variables in a very dynamic world. Like bombs are kind of figuratively going off. They have to not only recall the information, but plug and play it like a formula. They've got to understand the formula, just like if you were doing, you know, physics or calculus, plug all that in while it's going on. You know what I'm saying? And so it's like it's a lot harder than we can imagine. So when you minimize the run schemes and pass combos to a point that you know you've attacked that whole field because you went up against that hit chart, you've seen, you put your plays on it, you know you can attack the whole field, you know you're not being redundant in areas, and now you dress it up, you know. And so how do you do that again? Formations and motions and all that stuff. That's geography class. You know, that is just recalling information. So you can gain an advantage. And in the John Arnett offense, I'm going to try to be as simple schematically as possible. So, and then dress up literally as diverse as possible as I can, formationally and motion wise, because I want to teach kids the whys and what they're trying to accomplish for each play. And if they know it inside out like that, man, that's when you get good teams. You know what I'm saying? Like that's the deal.
Okay. Now I have two questions for you to finish. One's football, one's non-football. I'll start with non-football. We talked a little about this before we started. But I've had long hair twice in my life.
Yes.
Okay. When I was like 4 or 5 years old, like pre-kindergarten.
Right.
And then I had my senior year of high school, I made a very bad choice. Growing it out wasn't the bad choice. Bleaching it blonde was the bad choice. One, obviously why, and we talked a little about this before we started.
Right.
Two, how do you get it to look so good? Because I'm considering growing out my hair again, and like yours looks well done.
Man, you know, like it all started that and it's obvious. You can see that my scalp up through it on the screen. Like my hair was getting pretty thin. You know what I'm saying? And I've never grown my hair out in my life. I've always been, you know, my dad's a Marine. We went high and tight, bro. Like that is a number one fade on the side and stuff has been my longest hair. And then I was like, you know what? If I'm gonna try it, I need to do it. And man, I love it. And I feel silly like around my wife sometimes with it because it's like I'm learning things about long hair that there's a lot of women out there and dudes that have long hair that just take for granted, like they're like, duh, because I'll be like, it gets a lot more tangly right after you wash it. And I didn't know that. And Chrissy's like, yeah, like obviously. So, but I love it. And I call it the lion mane, set lion's mane. And, I don't see it changing anytime soon. It's one of those deals that it helps me feel like I'm the best me, and I'm confident with it. And man, confidence is everything. Gain confidence by being comfortable and preparing the best you can.
Okay. Like I said, because I've considered growing it back out, because kind of like you, mine's starting to thin pretty bad.
Yeah.
Like, because if I haven't gone through a haircut, you can especially see it on the side. Like, it just looks very thin compared to what it used to be. So,
Right.
like also this offseason, I've started regrowing out since May, the goatee, which my wife hates, but that's a whole nother.
Right.
That's a whole nother issue. The last question I'll ask you is, you've obviously looked at a lot of stuff this past year. And it doesn't have to be anything of mine. This is not me plugging anything of mine, but is there anybody or anything that you've listened to? Because you mentioned the YouTube and doing the research, especially on the install stuff that's maybe helped you or made you think. That doesn't have to be help. It's just it created a thought for something else.
Yeah.
Is there anybody you listen to or talk to that you're like, hey, that gave me some good ideas, or hey, maybe I should avoid that, or you get my drift?
Yeah, I would say one of the biggest things for me, man, is I'm real lucky. I have several friends that I coached either with or around down there on the coast. That we got a group text and a bunch of good coaches that are willing to share and have access to a lot of different film and stuff, man. And it's always looking at things and dissecting them and stuff like that. That makes you understand it. So it's like I've been real lucky to have that. And other than that, that being the biggest thing that I feel like I gained outside, like when I'm learning. I really like what some of the cats who is it, Dan Casey does on Twitter and stuff like that, like breaking it down. Some people are trying to do it for the clout, the wrong reasons, but it seems like several of those guys are doing some things on the right, and it's always being good to expose myself to more of that information and see things, and it sparked a lot of deals. So I think that's one of the things I appreciate the most is not necessarily anyone particular. I know Zach Bass down there at Hardin Jefferson. He gives me a lot of good advice, and he don't really post much online, but he does a good job on that stuff. And I'm friends with Kadudi, and that guy's unbelievable, amazing coach. And it's just getting information. So it's like the best social media or the best information out there to make you a better coach is the stuff like you said that you weren't. It's not even directly what you take from it, but which sparks thoughts right there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah. Coaches, one, I'll link a bunch of his other stuff that he's done with me in the bio. He has a great inside zone presentation that he did. God, what was that 3 years? 3 years.
We've been friends now for a while, man. It was
God.
Right at COVID, I think, is the first time I was lucky enough to come on.
Yeah, so 3 years ago. So there's all that. He's been on other stuff too, like Coach Steve. He's been on with Coach Steve several times. You could, if you just type John Arnett into YouTube, you're going to find some good stuff. And we didn't have this conversation. It's not just football either. There's great life stuff. He's a chemistry teacher. We spent 20 minutes talking about family and other stuff before we even started. So, follow him on Twitter. He's always got good stuff on there too. I think I liked something earlier today about how do you make a O-line coach happy in 4 words? And I think you put wide zone scored 60 or something like that.
Exactly.
So just like that. So give him a follow, share, subscribe, all that lovely jazz. Check out our sponsor, Coachpad. Otherwise, that's another episode of the Gap Down Backer podcast.